Justice Leonel.
Good afternoon, Professor.
Good afternoon, Dean.
May I call you that? It has been a while since we have had an intelligent conversation, or a not so intelligent conversation, is it not? So I would, of course, beg your indulgence because at certain points I will go to certain exaggerations, perhaps even push some of the questions to its malicious extreme, because I hope you understand that we are here trying to test some of your premises, if that would be
Yes,
all
Your
right
Honor.
with you. First, I was curious about your opening statement where you said that our initial interrogatory posture should be that we should try to find constitutionality in the words of the statute rather than go find unconstitutionality. Why is that?
Because I think, Your Honor, that is the role of this honorable court within a scheme of separation of powers. That is also what this honorable court has narrated over and over again in its existing jurisprudence.
But yet we exist, and there is a second paragraph to Section 1 of Article 8, which gives us some leeway to find grave abuse of discretion. And of course, you know that there is existing academic literature,
Yes.
John Hart Ely, Alexander Bickel, which says that we do have a function, and that function is to check whether there has been a democratic deficit in the political branches of government. Would you say that we could weigh the policy purposes of the Congress and the President, weigh it against the permanent values that are congealed in the text of the Constitution?
That is true, Your Honor, as a general and theoretical matter. But if I may manifest something about the grave abuse of discretion clause, I think if you talk to those who are responsible for that text, they will confidently tell you that the goal behind the grave abuse of discretion clause was to make the court not gun-shy, as it was during the Marcos years. But it certainly wasn't meant to make the court trigger-happy as an institution looking for ways to exercise its constitutional powers.
In other words, counsel, you are saying that it is this court that looks at minority rights, gives it a second look, because minority rights tend to be overlooked in a democratic setup. Of course, the majority will have the numbers in both the House and the Senate. Is that not correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And in this particular case, could we say that the petitioners are part of the minority in this case?
It depends, Your Honor, on how we define minority. Even if we say that petitioners constitute a minority because they are in their own words, the true Catholic, their minority rights are being set up against the rights of majority of Filipinos who are economically challenged and therefore are also part of the political minority.
Just so we are clear about where we start with our or our premises and our initial posture, the numbers that were told to us by both Senator Cayetano and Congressman Lagman in terms of the votes in the House and the Senate, it was not a landslide victory for the RH. Is that not correct? In other words, the majority was not slim, but it was not overwhelming in terms of the passage of the bills.
That seems to have been the case, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, if we continue with the canonical ways by which we should be thinking about this case, therefore, we should try to look at words in the statute, and if there is a way of reading the statute that will make it constitutional, your position is that we should adopt that interpretation, barring a future case where we can actually apply and find the exception to that finding.
Yes, Your Honor.
So therefore, for instance, the words in Section 9 of the law, that hormonal contraceptives and other safe, legal, non-abortifacient, etc., that if we could read that to mean that hormonal contraceptives, as proposed by, I think, Senator Pia Cayetano and Congressman Lagman, to mean only a classification,
Yes.
but not a specific kind of a contraceptive, your position is that we should do that particular reading and wait for that time when there is an actual hormonal contraceptive, a brand, a kind, that will come up to this court, where the FDA might have a contrary finding.
Yes, Your Honor.
Copper IUDs. for that matter, can be questioned before the FDA. Is that not correct?
Yes, I think so.
In
Your
other
Honor.
words, copper IUDs, is the FDA closed about reconsidering whether copper IUDs can be in the market?
I don't think they can be closed given that they have an obligation under the RH law
Certain
to determine
pills.
whether or not they're safe.
Certain pills that have a long list of contraindications. Is the FDA now close to reconsidering those pills?
No, Your Honor.
As a matter of fact, maybe we do not know because there has been no attempt yet to go to the FDA. Is that not correct?
Correct, Your
But
Honor.
there is now an attempt to go to this court and say because of copper IUDs, because of a certain kind of pill, all hormonal contraceptives are therefore unsafe and therefore the law is unconstitutional. Is that not a position that has been taken before this body?
I think that's the position of the petitioners, to engage in a shotgun method of litigation.
Shotgun, but I'm just saying that it might have been one of the positions
Yes,
that
Your
were
Honor.
taken. Now, you mentioned about facial challenges. First, just to be clear, this is different from as actually applied challenges.
Yes, Your
By
Honor.
facial challenge, what do you mean?
A facial challenge is a challenge to the statute based on its textual incompatibility with the Constitution.
And you say that canonically in constitutional litigation, that there are only very limited exceptions where we are allowed as a court or where we have self-limited ourselves, therefore judicially restrained ourselves to conduct inquiries in cases where it is only the text of the law not yet applied that we check against the Constitution. Is this not correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
And you say that this is in freedom of expression cases.
Yes, Your Honor.
And more particularly, would you say that this is not all freedom of expression cases, but only with respect to prior restraints, where the presumption is heavy against the law?
To use your language, Your Honor, certain core concerns of the Constitution.
Okay. However, this is the Supreme Court today. In other words, that this restraint came at a time when the court felt that it was its role within the scheme of things under the Constitution, given contemporary circumstances. There is a proposal, I think, in some of the petitions that there can be facial challenges when it is the right to life that is at stake. And this was heavily made by the first
Yes, sir.
speaker, Attorney Noche, if I'm not mistaken, during her presentation in this particular case. Now, why not? Why would you say that this court should, why can't we, as the court now, existing in 2013, in the Republic of the Philippines, not in any other jurisdiction, considering the circumstances where we are in as a developing, emerging economy, that we should re-examine this particular doctrine?
If it were, Your Honor, a right-to-life case, really, then the government shouldn't have any reservations about a facial challenge. But the right to life is not even implicated in this case, because for petitioners to make a case for right to life, they had made, a ton of wrong assumptions about the statute. They say it licenses abortion, but the statute facially says it doesn't license abortion. In fact, 7, 8, 9 times the statute says it will only provide safe, legal, and non-abortifacients. Does it violate the right of the unborn? Of course not, because it will violate the right of the unborn only if you make the assumption that this is an abortion statute. But this is not an abortion statute. If it were an abortion statute, maybe the court's special powers under the Grave Abuse of Discretion Clause may be triggered. But this is not an abortion statute, as is very clear in the statute itself.
Only if the existence of the violation of the right to life is on abortion. But of course, you have things like procreation here. The options of couples, as has been asked from you by some of my colleagues here, that is also part to life, but we will go to that later. That is another section in terms of the questions that I need to ask of you so that we are clarified in terms of the decision. Now, there is the other principle in terms of reading statutes, especially a criminal statute, that we should read it in such a way to be able to give meaning to all the words that are in the statute. Is that not correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
By the entire statute, we are saying that not only the provisions for the crime seems to have been introduced, but also where that provision is seen in the entire context of a particular law. Is that not correct?
I agree, Your Honor.
Therefore, we should interpret words such as knowing or incorrect in relation to declaration of principles, in relation to mechanisms that are provided in the law itself. Is that not correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Can we read can we interject the purposes and intent of the legislature as we see it?
Yes, Your Honor.
Not as textually evident in the statute, but as
Well,
how
in a
we see it.
facial challenge, you have to limit yourself, Your Honor, to the text of the statute.
Again, there is 23 section A subparagraph 1, which I think by now even the audience in the Supreme Court may have memorized. And this has something to do with knowingly withholding information or providing incorrect information. Is that not correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Now, the word knowing is, of course, standing by itself ambiguous. Is that not correct? Knowing. I mean, it can have a lot of meanings,
Yes, Your
including,
Honor. That is possible.
including a biblical one, if you understand what I mean.
Yes, Your Honor.
Standing alone. Correct.
Standing alone.
But in the context of the statute, if we are to accord the interrogative posture that you have proposed, that canonically we are to try to find the constitutionality first because of our standing in the scheme of things in the Constitution, that we should try to find a meaning that is viable. Could we not say that knowing here refers to a knowledge within a profession, as you may have argued?
Yes, Your Honor.
So knowing here means things like a doctor who treats a diabetic patient cannot provide advice that that patient can continue eating ice cream, with sugar, not sugar-free, or drinking soft drinks, etc. That would be incorrect information clearly, is it not, counsel?
Yes, Your Honor.
But there are, of course, certain things which are doubtful, such as, for instance, that a doctor makes a judgment as to whether a first-order antibiotic or a third-order antibiotic would be preferable to a particular patient. That is not very clearly incorrect information if the doctor commits a mistake. Is that not correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Because in the scheme of things, as applied to a particular patient, some patients might be more comfortable or may have had histories with several antibiotics which they did not take in accordance with the dosage and regularity, and therefore, now the doctor makes the judgment that it may not be a second but a third-order antibiotic that is prescribed. Is that not correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. So when we say knowingly prescribing incorrect information or saying incorrect information, we can frame that within the various provisions that are contained in the RH law. Is that not correct?
Yes, Your Honor. That's
Yes.
correct.
And therefore, it is entirely possible that it may be constitutional. Is that not correct?
Yes, that's correct.
But it is also entirely possible that it may be unconstitutional. Wouldn't you agree, counsel?
It's within the realm of possibilities.
Realm
Your
of
Honor.
possibilities. But here, because there's a realm, a possibility that it may be unconstitutional, what do you think what do you propose our posture should be? Should we not strike it down right now, just so we protect whoever might be convicted unconstitutionality in our, let us say, in our imagination? Or should we just accord this presumption first to the statute and wait until the particular case goes through the filing of an information, perhaps a motion to quash, raising the ground that this does not exist because it's unconstitutional, and wait for the certiorari action with us?
Your Honor, the exercise of the judicial function, specifically judicial review powers, cannot be exercised in a speculative fashion. In any case, there is still a case that may be had as applied.
So there are very clear areas in RH, in reproductive health. I think Senator Cayetano did say that when a physician will prescribe that kissing can make you pregnant, that clearly is a incorrect information. Is that not correct?
Yes, Your
And
Honor.
according to you, that is incorrect information because the science is not there, or the science that is supposed to inform the medical profession is not there.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. Of course, again, there are outlier issues, such as, of course, when it leads to something else. Is that not correct? Yes. So therefore, there are very clear cases, but there are also very doubtful cases. Again, counsel, shouldn't we strike it down immediately because there is the possibility that there are the doubtful cases that may exist out there, but we cannot see for now?
Your Honor, I think the function of the court is to sustain the constitutional statute, because the cause of not doing that would be to undermine the amount of political capital spent by other constituted agencies of the government just to pass, this particular statute. In any case, Your Honor, there is, again, litigation as applied where particular defendants or particular respondents can vent, their constitutional concerns against specific portions of the statute as it is implemented against them.
Now, let's go to a standard which you mentioned. The lowest standard is reasonableness.
Yes, Your Honor.
And the opposite of reasonableness is arbitrariness. Is that not correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Again, of course, we are using this not in the layman's language, but within the context of our jargon. Is that not correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
To be arbitrary, what does that mean?
Within a menu of options that are reasonable, the legislature chooses an option that is outside of that menu.
Or there is no reason, there is no logic that will support why a particular restriction is present
I
that
agree, Your Honor.
burdens a particular right that we find in our Bill of Rights or in the Constitution. Is that not correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
And therefore, if we can find a reason from the text of the statute, not from any statement made by perhaps advocate or non-advocate, then your argument is that we should try to declare this as defeat the petition and declare the law for now as constitutional. Is that not correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Now let's go to the provisions on education. First and foremost, why is education necessary for sex? Why is sexual education necessary?
Sexual education, Your Honor, is necessary because the physical act has a lot of implications. And those implications tread into the private realm and tread into the public realm. The things that we do in our private lives will have public implications. But more importantly, the things that we do in our private lives define us. There are forms of self-identification. And those forms of self-identification, I think, become meaningful only if we have sufficient knowledge about the various impacts of the things that we do.
But we have the family. And a reading of the Constitution can be that it's the family or it's the family's duty or family members' duty to actually educate their children with respect to sex. Can that be a correct, an absolutely correct assumption?
The family, Your Honor, is a very good platform for sexual education. But it doesn't exhaust the avenues for learning about one's body and the things
You mean
that
to
one
say,
can
Counsel, that there are families within the archipelago that we have that do not teach their children responsibilities about sex, what the sexual act might be for, the ethical considerations, and of course, what creates a baby? Are there families within our country that fails to inform?
I suppose, Your Honor, that as a consequence of certain cultural constraints or personal temperament, there are those kinds of families.
Or simply because they've inherited a culture of political ignorance?
Yes.
Which means, or a political culture that puts them into ignorance, which means that they did not have the opportunity to go through education as we have had. Their education is simply what they see on television or perhaps what they oversee in the internet, etc., and therefore they could not provide the right information. Is this not correct?
Yes. Ignorance can be carried over several generations and be entrenched.
Now,
yes, Your Honor.
if this can be the reality, the possible reality, when we say the primary right of the family, do we mean the only institution that can actually guide children to do the proper thing is the family?
No, Your Honor.
So it is possible that it can be schools.
Yes, Your Honor.
It is possible that it can be the church.
Yes, Your Honor.
By the way, when the church says that sex is only for procreation, does it have the authority to do so? A church, not all. A church.
That would qualify, Your Honor, as an institutional speech.
Regardless of whether or not there is parental consent given to the minors who attend these religious activities, still the church has that capacity to be able to inform its constituents that sex is for procreation. Is that not correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Now, for purposes of the school, supposing that the family does not know trigonometry, does it need to consult the parents before it can teach trigonometry?
No, Your Honor.
If the parents are, of course, not knowledgeable about what actually creates a baby, simply because, again, they suffer from the political culture that puts them into ignorance. Cannot the state compel schools to have a curricula that teaches them the scientific basis of how a sperm meets an egg, creates a fertilized ovum, implants, and creates a baby?
It can, Your Honor.
It can. And in the way that the law is actually crafted, is there space for families who are knowledgeable to participate in the creation of that curriculum?
There is a lot of space, Your Honor.
Because the provision that you read a while ago does say that in consultation with family groups. And
Yes,
there
Your
are always parent-teachers associations that usually look at the curriculum of certain. Of course, Counsel, you will agree with me that certain schools can commit a mistake. Is that not right?
Yes, Your Honor.
And that mistake, of course, can that be the ground can that be the basis to find that a certain law is unconstitutional, simply because a school might not provide the correct, appropriate educational materials, or may overestimate the development of a certain group of children, materials that are either too advanced or perhaps too backward to the children. Can we declare a law as unconstitutional simply on the possibility that schools can commit mistakes?
No, Your Honor. A school may be a bad school, but it doesn't result in the unconstitutionality of the statute.
So when we say primary, it doesn't mean not only. It doesn't mean that it is only the family that will
No,
guide
it
the
doesn't,
children.
Your Honor.
Is this still consistent with, by the way, can the state impose moral values?
No, Your Honor.
But there are three provisions in the Constitution, and perhaps you can cover this in the memoranda. There are three provisions in the Constitution which mention morals and development.
Yes.
Will your answer still change? Because a while ago, you were informed that our Constitution is different from other constitutions in different parts of this planet. And therefore, it might be possible that ours is of a different character. So will your answer change, considering that there are three different provisions?
Oh, Your Honor. While the Constitution mentions morality and moral values, it doesn't provide any content with respect to that moral values.
So it is possible that in educating our children, they will tend to value the sexual act more, put more premium into that particular act. And being informed, therefore, will reduce their proclivities with respect to actually having sex partners, and therefore just wait, do abstinence, or be more selective in terms of their partners.
It is possible, Your Honor.
And did Congress look at the statistics in relation to fertility rates?
I assume, Your Honor, that
Yes,
they did
and
that.
did it not find that for so long as people are educated, the fertility rates are lower?
I think there was a finding, Your Honor.
And in terms of teenage pregnancies, teenagers who tend to be educated in schools tend to have lower fertility rates than teenagers that are outside. Is that not?
That is correct, Your
Yes.
Honor.
Now, let's go to a particularly nagging problem, which has something to do with, I think, the right to procreate. By the way, I was struck by a statement that you made, that marriage is not an excuse to control the right to procreate of another person. We do have conjugal rights in the civil code. Is that not correct?
There are conjugal rights, Your Honor.
Yes, and that statement you made, that is law or your experience? Marriage is not an excuse to control the right to procreate of the other individual. When you were queried on why there is no requirement for consent of the spouse for certain kinds of procedures embedded in this law.
Theoretical statement, Your Honor, not based on experience.
Okay, so looking at this right to, before we go to the right to procreate, can the state offend a religion? Is it wrong, is it constitutionally wrong for a state to offend a religion?
Depends, Your Honor, on the factual situation.
There are religious beliefs that one should wear a turban. But the state promulgates a law which says that whenever you ride a motorcycle, you wear a helmet. Is the state allowed to be able to do that under our constitutional order?
Again, Your Honor, I'd have to wait for a certain set of facts
But
to make
it
a
is not
judgment.
necessary to say that, it is not necessarily true that our Constitution says the state cannot do that.
Yes,
It
yes,
is
not
possible that
necessarily.
the state can.
Yes.
Let me give another example, and this has something to do with Satanism maybe, that you offer a virgin in sacrifice to a god, okay? Yet our law says that there is a punishment for murder and for homicide, is that not, or infanticide. So can the state offend that religion?
In that sense, yes, Your Honor.
By the way, when we say religion, do we always say something that is mean a belief that is benign and good and true?
Not necessarily, Your Honor.
Really? So there can be religions which are bad?
Again, it is within the realm of possibility.
Yes, and it could be possible that somebody does not have a religion. Is that not correct?
Very possible, Your Honor.
Very possible. And that belief of not having a God, is that also part of protected religious expression?
Protected speech, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, having said that, let's go to a few matters. There is the right to procreate. Is that not true?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is that a constitutionally protected right?
It's part of the Liberty Clause, Your Honor.
Yes, the right to life, more particularly. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property. Life or liberty, I think, is implied in terms of the right to procreate. And by the right to procreate, we mean it gives an individual the autonomy whether to act to create or not to create. Is that not true?
That's true, Your Honor.
Now, let me just be clear about this. This law compels a couple not to procreate. Is that a true premise? This
False
law
statement, Your Honor.
compels the couple not to procreate. False.
False statement, Your Honor.
But the couple or whoever, the public, is presented with a full range of options, all about contraception, for them not to have a baby. Is that not correct?
Even if that is how it is presented to them, they still retain the right to reject that information, Your Honor.
So, is there a criminal penalty if somebody who listens to this presentation of the full range will not actually use a condom or an IUD or any of the contraceptive devices that are there?
No, Your Honor, that will violate the liberty right of that person.
As a matter of fact, there is a penal provision for the
Yes,
compulsion
in
of
fact.
these individuals, both for the public person who does it, as well as for employers. Is that not correct?
Yes, that is
Counsel.
absolutely correct.
Yes. So what we are saying, therefore, is that this law does not affect that particular right. So it does not reach into that particular sphere of autonomy too deeply. Is that not correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Okay. The sexual act itself contains a lot of choices. Who your partner will be, the ethical conditions under which you commit the sexual act, the moral choices that you make based upon your own religious beliefs, why we do it, etc. So therefore, this is also within the sphere of liberty. Is that not correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Is this affected by the RH law?
To the extent that it enables people to have the options, yes.
But it does seem to imply that when you have a contraceptive, that it encourages you to commit the sexual act. Is
No,
that
Your
a
Honor.
correct premise?
No, Your Honor.
So why is it not a correct premise?
Because if you have the contraceptive, it means you have the option. You can actually choose not to use it.
Yes, but you can choose not to use it but have sex nonetheless. Is that not correct?
Yes,
And contraceptives are only there when you have sex. Is that not correct?
yes.
So therefore, the government is now producing a full governmental program saying to the entire population, you can have sex.
No, Your
anytime
Honor.
you want. Why is that not the case?
Because the program is meant to enable people to have the choice whether or not they can decide to be pregnant today, tomorrow, or some other time, or space their pregnancy. It is a liberal program, Your Honor. It is a liberal program in the sense that at bottom and at the end, the choice whether or not to procreate or to use the information that was given or the service that was rendered still rests with the person or the family or the couple.
Just because government says it does not mean that the public must do it. Is that correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
And here, it is not government saying have sex. It means if you want to have sex, look at these options, including the natural method. Is that not correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
By the way, by not framing this entire law within the context of marriage, are we not violating the provisions on family?
No, Your Honor. It is actually inclusive. It includes the family and individuals.
In other words, a person who is not married but is of age, just to create a situation, may actually have the access to a full range of options. Is this not? This is in the law.
It's in the law, Your Honor.
So it destroys the family. Does
No,
it
Your
not?
Honor.
Why?
Of course not. Because it recognizes that individuals who are not married, right, have the right to use their bodies for self-identification through the sexual act. It is within the realm of liberty. A person has the constitutional right to engage in intimate relationships, and those intimate relationships may involve the physical act. What the state is simply saying is, if you're going to engage in those types of intimate relationships, we can provide you with the information and the services and the devices so that you can enable yourself to have a greater range of options.
So you're saying, counsel, that marriage or not being married is not a natural antidote against wanting to have sex.
Again, Your Honor.
You're saying that marriage by itself is not being married is not a natural antidote to the natural act of having sex. In other words, you will want to have sex whether you're married or not.
Will? I'm not so sure, Your Honor. You can,
You can.
if you want to, and if there's a willing partner, I suppose.
Is this supported by science?
By logic,
Yes.
Your Honor.
But it is unethical and immoral to actually commit the sexual act prior to marriage. That is what some believe. Shouldn't we adopt that into our legislation?
Your Honor, those who believe that are well within their constitutional rights to act on that belief, but they cannot impose that particular belief on other citizens.
Again, why is that not possible?
Because we recognize the liberty right of individual citizens and the privacy of choice to determine when to have sex.
Again, that may be the case for certain jurisdictions. But the challenge to you a while ago was, we do have Article 15, which is on the family. By the way, counsel, is the family defined there?
I don't think so, Your Honor. I think it's the family, as mentioned in the Constitution, is broad enough to allow individuals and couples to define the kind of family they want to construct.
By the kind of family, it can be a family where the husband and the wife lives in separate rooms or separate houses,
Yes, Your Honor.
but not actually avail of legal separation or reality of marriage. Is that not correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. For so long as they do not do something which is illegal, they can define what their family would be. As a
Yes,
matter
Your
of fact, it is also possible for families that have been declared, where their marriages have been declared null and void, to maintain their friendly relations to each other and still call themselves family under the Constitution. Is
Possible,
that not
Your
correct? It can also be possible that there is a family that has not even undergone the marriage ceremonies. Is that not
Yes.
correct? And therefore, the family there is broad enough.
Yes.
And as you said, the right to one's choices of intimate partnerships of whatever kind and whatever nature is at the core of liberty in relation to your person. You choose your partners, and therefore you choose how you define yourselves. Is that not correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. So again, this law does not reach that far. It only provides information just in case there are people that have the natural proclivities or urge to have sex, and within their sphere of ethical and moral beliefs, that they could have it and therefore may want to avail of that.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. Would it have been better for this law to actually contain a warning, such as breast milk is good until the age of 2 years old? So maybe here, full range of options, but it is always better not to have sex. Should that not have been in the law?
No, Your Honor.
Why?
Because I think it is not the function of the government
It might
to
have
tell
been,
us
it
whether or
might
not
have
to
been
have
better,
sex.
but would you say that it is unconstitutional because it is not there?
No, Your Honor.
Let's go to the to conscientious objectors. Can there be conscientious objectors for traffic lights?
I can't think of a reasonable
Under
way
the
to
law now,
conscientiously
under
object.
statutes now, can there be conscientious objectors for traffic regulations?
None, Your Honor.
None. Are there conscientious objectors for the crime of murder?
None, Your Honor.
None. Are there conscientious objectors for service in the military? No, I'm sorry, there is no draft. Are there conscientious objectors for people in the army not wanting to kill?
I don't think so, Your Honor.
None. Are there conscientious objectors within the police system, the PNP, for people who do not want to use violence in order to arrest?
None, Your Honor.
None. This law has a conscientious objector clause. Isn't that unconstitutional because it is unequal protection of the law?
No, Your Honor. It is constitutional precisely because it is a statement by the government that they respect that in certain areas of concern, right, they should respect the religious or ethical beliefs of some professionals.
So what makes this law different? Why is there a conscientious objector provision in the law, whereas in other laws that we have, there is no opening for conscientious objectors, clearly stated in statutes?
Well, on a practical level or at a political level, I suppose it is because there were those who lobbied intensely enough for that kind of a conscientious objector status. I think, Your Honor, that this is the first statute of its kind in the Philippines insofar as a conscientious objector status is concerned.
As a
And I
matter of
wouldn't
fact,
see-
counsel,
sorry.
what is a conscientious objector? What is conscience? Is it something that is in a code somewhere?
No, Your Honor.
No. So what is conscience?
Conscience, Your Honor, can be broadly defined as one's moral values, system of belief, right?
Let me get this out of the way immediately. A conscientious objector is someone that believes in a particular religion. That is the
Not
only.
necessarily, Your
Not
Honor.
necessarily. So it's possible to have a conscientious objector that is not Catholic. Is that true?
Possible, Your Honor.
Yes. So conscientious objector. How do we know that the objection is really part of one's conscience? Are we not looking too deeply upon the individual?
If you look, Your Honor, at the statute, on its face, it is a very generous conscientious objector status. There aren't a lot of items. There's no compliance mechanism insofar as substantiating the nature of your conscientious objection.
Isn't this vague?
No, Your
Because
Honor.
it allows any kind of person to say, my conscience tells me, that little voice inside my head, the good part, tells me that I should violate this or that I should not do this.
Your Honor, that's a case for declaring the law constitutional because it's generously favorable towards respecting a person's own moral values.
But as you said, not if there is another right which is involved. You remember the harm principle of
Yes.
Locke. As you said, in Ebra Nilag, there was nobody that will be hurt by it.
Yes.
If there is somebody within law and economics, the externality is too broad
Yes.
that nobody is actually hurt by not standing up in attention, by just simply standing up and not saluting the flag. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Here, there is a particular person that is going to be hurt, and that is the patient.
Yes.
Here, does it allow the operation of the conscientious objector provision only if the patient is also having the same kind of conscience?
No, Your Honor. In
So it's
fact,
possible that the patient really wants to know what is the full range of options.
yes.
And therefore, again, isn't this clause by itself the one that is unconstitutional? Because it creates a gaping hole as against people that want that implementation. It affects a right, the right of the patient. It is unequal protection of the law.
Your Honor, that's a very good theoretical point, but I don't think the petitioners will want to go there. Finally, that is not the question before us. This is not a case for declaring the conscientious objector status unconstitutional on the ground that it creates an unnecessary burden on the part of a patient. In fact, Your Honor, it is a manifestation of the level of solicitous regard of the state insofar as respecting the religious concerns and ethical concerns of medical professionals.
What is the position of government? Can we declare this clause, conscientious objection, as unconstitutional? Just this clause.
The position of the government, Your Honor, is that this is a carefully balanced clause. This is a carefully balanced provision of the law that takes into consideration the concern of the religious objector and the concern of the citizen.
Okay. Here we have conscience being defined now. A lot of the petitioners belong to a particular religion. Of course, because the argument was not won within the political department, they come now to this court claiming that there is such a violation of a religion. Is it really a violation of religion if the state does or compels an act which is not within the belief system of a particular religion?
No.
Not part of freedom of religion.
No, Your Honor.
Again, looking at Section 5 of Article 3, and I think Justice Bernabe had outlined it before, there are two parts. One is non-establishment, and the other one is the free exercise. So non-establishment clause, are we establishing the anti of a particular religion just by sort of a reverse, in a reverse way, disestablishing a religion by coming out with the RH law?
No, Your Honor.
Why not?
Because, again, at bottom, Your Honor, people are allowed to use their religion as a means to morally judge the RH law. They can reject the information, they can reject the service, they can reject the devices that may be offered to them. In fact, a citizen can absolutely not go to a public health center if he or she is totally against the statute and the subsidy.
We are taking a risk here with respect to that particular religion. Okay, let me ask. Can a priest, during a mass, say that the RH law is immoral?
Yes.
Will he be incarcerated because of this law?
No, Your Honor.
Will a priest be incarcerated because it says that a copper IUD actually causes more harm than good?
No, Your Honor.
By the way, is that incorrect or correct information?
Regardless, Your Honor.
Not yet. Probability is either way. So therefore, it does not prevent the church from actually saying its mind in relation to this particular law. It only prevents the medical professional from actually it doesn't compel the medical professional to actually say something. Is that not correct?
No, Your Honor.
It simply states that the medical professional should refer it.
Yes, Your Honor.
By the way, is this within the jargon or the profession, within the rules of the profession of the medical profession? Is this accepted?
I have done some research, Your Honor, and apparently it is.
Yes, among the organization of OB-GYN that our doctors belong to, as well as the medical community, there seems to be some accepted ethical regulations relating to these things. Very much appreciate if the Solicitor General and the petitioners would take a look at this so that we are able to look at it. In other words,
do that, Your Honor.
we have just, the RH law just legalized medical practice. Is this not correct?
Legalized.
Legalized medical practice.
I think
Again,
medical practice has always had some legal aspects to it. And the RH law is simply a way by which the government, given its social concern, ups the ante by regulating, to some extent, the relationship between a medical professional and a citizen.
Okay. Maybe a few last points. Are we reducing the number of the poor by killing those who are now persons who belong to the poor by this law?
No, Your Honor.
We are not. In other words, the poor population will be the same. Is that not correct?
Correct.
Are we creating, with this law, is the Congress creating the possibility that there will be more informed choices for poor families so that they can opt to have 10 children or only one?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. In that way, we are not actually reducing the number of the poor or actually killing off the poor, but we are, by this law, actually presenting certain options to the poor. Is that not correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
So, is this population control?
No, Your Honor.
Why is it not population control?
Because number one, the statute says so. And number two, it is not population control, it's a rights enhancement measure.
The right to procreation, is that absolute?
No right is absolute, Your Honor.
The right to procreate means the things that come before the sexual act and things that come after. Is that not correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. If there are children which are uncared for by the family, who takes care of them?
The state.
The state. And by the state, who do we mean? Does it mean our public officers? Or does it mean the public in general?
Both, Your Honor.
So to a certain extent, can we say that the right to procreate is sometimes also circumscribed? That there is a sphere of autonomy granted by our Constitution, but at a certain time, given the right case, given the right legislation, that there can be limits to the right to procreate.
Yes, Your Honor.
But are we there yet?
No, Your Honor.
No, this law does not produce numbers. Is that not correct?
No, Your Honor.
It just, in fact, it says that the demographics that will result from it is simply incidental. Is that not
Correct, Your
correct? Okay. We are taking a risk with the RH law. Is this not correct, counsel?
Every legislation is a form of risk.
Every legislation is a form of risk. We are depending on the wisdom of people who were elected by us, no matter how imperfect our electoral system may be, to guide us in terms of what our future will be. Is that not correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Is it the role of this court to rethink that? Or is it the role of this court to simply see whether they have exceeded the frame provided by the Constitution?
It's the latter, Your Honor.
And in your evaluation, do you think that this is worth the risk that this court might give in terms of declaring this law?
Your Honor, in my evaluation, these petitions present constitutional non-issues.
Is the Solicitor General open to actual cases where it might be clearly shown that some of the fears that the petitioners have expressed actually come true, and that the Solicitor General will take sides with the petitioners at that appropriate time?
It is possible.
Okay, thank you, counsel.